morning and welcome back to Painting Something, Reaper Pro-Tips. It's like both. Good morning. You can tell it's like Anne's Reset Monday for the week. Hello, good morning, and everybody. So how the heck are you? My brain's not here. Oh, and yeah, there's those co-host guys, those disembodied hands, Justin and John. They're here too, hypothetically. I haven't seen them, so I can't prove they exist. Pendrake, thank you for the resub, 15 months. And geez, Clavicus, you're at 97. Like, you only need 3 more to break 100, you know. Thank you for the gift sub. That's exciting. You should choose a really cool show to do to get your 100 gifted subs. That's pretty impressive, though, if you think about that, guys. That's super, super generous of Clavicus. So, like, upvote Clavicus on the internet, just in general. That's what I'm going to say. Everybody's like, blah, 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 we're working. You're all busy. Busy. Well, fine, I'll get busy too. We're going to work on M&M's today. Hey, Bob and Julie. Oh, dear me. You guys ever have one of those mornings where, like, you're pretty sure that you ran into, like, almost everybody that you know in your dreams the previous night, but you can't remember anything? And then you're nervous. Oh, wow. Oh, he decided to up it. Clavicus with the up there, with the gift 5 tier 1 subs. Everybody gets subs for everyone. Thank you, Clavicus. Oh, taxes. Yeah, David did his a little while ago. He has a sad also. Oh no, Quindy. Maybe they slept late. Maybe the cleaning people slept late. All right, let's get some colors going on here. We're gonna do. So this is a weird sword because so much of it faces down, which means it doesn't get much light. So a lot of this underside is just going to be like under reflection. You're kind of screwed because you're just like, you really don't have a direct light source. So you kind of have to paint it abstractly, and not overstress about it. It's just the way it is. Because the only light that you're going to get reflected is from the ground. And here we've got a very blue-gray ground to do with our blue-gray, our blue-gray. Wow. Yeah, it's going to be one of those days, guys. I think I used Ritterlick on her hair, didn't I? Let's get our blues out. Let's get the blues going on. I thought Quindy was at work. Am I correct? Are you in the office? Whatever the office may be, Quindy. For some reason, I had gotten the impression that you were, I mean, the cleaners used to come to Reaper during the middle of the afternoon, or late afternoon. Let's see here. Let's just take care. Anything else that I want to do silver? I don't think so. I suppose it would help if I had my glasses on. Otherwise, I'm not going to see anything. I've become resigned to the fact that today is going to be one of those days with Anne's brain. Sometimes you just got to shrug and go, you know, that be the way it is. All right. Yeah, we didn't do the little, looks like I kind of missed 2 more little clasps back here. And I might want to do the little button there in silver. Otherwise, though, I think there's really not much silver on Monique. As I painted her originally, I could do the little buttons on the back of her cloth in silver. But I think I want them in gold because I want that yellow bounce. So usually silver NMM is like, I reserve it for like steel swords and armor. I don't use it actually for ornamentation much on models. Because I think it's easier to use gold as a accent. Because silver is just gray. And especially if you're doing very small areas, the gray, like even if you introduce a color into the gray, it's really not going to be much more than gray. So I'm not a huge fan of silver, like jewelry and embellishments, although we are going to use some on the half orc because I don't want to load her up with too much gold. Let's see here. I do want some walnut. And I need to add the tiniest touch of Ritterlich to this gray because I don't want to overpower it. And Ritterlich is a very, very strong blue, and it goes a long way. A little of it goes a very long way. So be cautious. Be cautious with your usage of the blues. They are very strong, and when you mix them with gray, they will overwhelm it. So I think I'm actually just going to put a drop up here. There. And that way, I can slowly mix in a little bit at a time. I do this a lot using the upper portions of my palette. See, even that tiny bit, look at how much it's pushed that gray toward blue. So now I did start with a very blue-gray on her sword and her base, so this could be just perfect. But it did not take much at all to overwhelm and shift 4 drops of cloudy gray. So I think this looks exactly like the gray that we've got on the sword, though, so I may have lucked out. Mika, the genie is still in progress. Like, I seldom... I hate to say I seldom finish it, but when you've still got so much to go, and I only do 1.5-hour streams. So my stream doesn't go on for 4 hours like some people. So we got the hair mostly done, but we still have that entire backside of the smoke, and I've still got the lamp. I haven't decided what I'm going to do for basing her. If I'm just going to go with the kind of cobblestone thing that Bobby has going on or not. But no, what we do here, Mika, if you weren't aware, we do a different model every day, but we have a rotation of like 6. So essentially, every day of the week, if you tune in, you're going to see a different mini. And over time, all of them get done. So I have like the genie, Monique, a wyvern, a half-orc wizard, a mushroom lady, and an elf wizard right now. So every day we go to a new one of those, but over time they all get done, right? It's just they're at different stages of doneness, and of course every model has different colors and different features. So here, I always try to mix it up too. I always try to have some monsters and some good people and some evil people and this was our first chibi that we decided to do on stream. Yeah, Tish. Yeah, because what essentially I wanted to do, Mika, is that if some people could only tune into the show on like Mondays, I wanted them to always have the opportunity to look at a different model and maybe learn something different. Because mostly this show is less about finishing projects and more about explaining stuff and answering questions. So the more models I work on over the course of a week, the more models that people might think of different questions about painting. So that's why we designed it like this. For a while, we were just grabbing a random model. We weren't finishing it at all. I was just demoing a particular thing. But I figured that it was probably more effective to do the start to finish. So that's why we went to that format. I need white. I cannot do NMM without pure white, guys. It's impossible. Don't try it. Don't try this at home, kids. But yeah, so we have a whole bunch. So tomorrow is Wyvern Day. Here, let me show you the Wyvern. Wyvern Day. The Wyvern is stuck to his card. His or her card. I kind of think it's a her. So the Wyvern, come here, everybody. Get your cards out of the way. The Wyvern has cool stripy wings. I'm not in focus on Wyvern because she is very large. But yeah, so we've been working on wings on the Wyvern and stuff like that. It's been Wing Day for a very long time for the Wyvern. So tomorrow is Wyvern. Or Wyvern, or however they pronounced it in archaic times. Yeah, and then Monday will be the half-orc wizard, who's actually my favorite of the entire bunch that I'm working on right now. Got my camera a little crooked. I hate it. Don't you hate it when your camera's crooked? Hello, German Theater. Laggy Twitch video? Must be you. Oh, I hate to blame you, Pendrake. Yeah, when they start getting close to done, they look cooler. Gerethanator. There we go. Not Gerethanator. Gerethanator. I'm bad with names. All right. Well, let's block in some more of the space and see how close I really am to the original color. I think I'm not quite as dark, but that's all right. Maybe it'll dry darker. Mostly I just want to get these flagstones blocked in at this point. But yeah, so that's what we do. We do a different model every day, but we do a rotation of like 6. So we'll always come back around. And it's nice for me too, because if I had to sit and work on one model, I would be so bored. In my real painting life, I need to get in focus too. One second. In my real painting life, I always have a couple of projects going at a time. I try to resist the urge to have like a lot of projects going at a time. David currently my boyfriend has a lot of projects going at a time, and he has no problem with that, but it's very easy for me to get overwhelmed. So I try not to have too many, but I have learned that I need a couple because I can't just sit usually and work on one thing. I'll get to a point, usually not so much even getting bored, but I'll get to a point where I'm just kind of tired of it, or I'm stuck. Where I'm at a point where I have to make a decision and I'm not sure where I want to go yet. So that's a real thing. And it's not just you, if you experience that. I think almost every artist gets to that point. Artists and writers and craftspeople will be working on a project and just kind of hit a point where they're like, oh, where do I go from here? And it's shouldn't feel like any shame about putting the project aside at that point. Sometimes your brain has to just kind of percolate on it. Set it to percolate, to simmer on the back burner, and your brain will come up with something eventually. Yes. Yeah, otters, the otters may be disrupting your internet, Pendrake. Don't want to forget this flagstone. And always leave a dark shadow around the foot. I missed a spot back there. There's a little divot in the base. And my shadow did not go all the way back. Now it is. Now it is. Now that's a nice dark shadow. But yeah, I try to keep also, it's, I have to kind of go with the flow, but I also like it when projects are in various stages of completion. Like we just started Mushroom Lady last week. And we're almost done with Monique here. So I like it when we've got a bunch of models that are all kind of in different places, because that also is like different things to talk about in the creative process. I am all about the creative process. All right, so you've got a choice here. You could paint the outside rim of this just the gray blue of the flagstones, or you could paint it dark. I tend to like, I haven't decided if I'm going to mount her on a black base yet. Let me see, do I have anything close to hand? She probably fits on the inset of one of these pretty easily. She's probably made to, but either way, you've still got that thick rim to deal with. So I usually paint it dark until or unless I decide to do something with it. When blending into a base, I probably would putty it. I might decide to putty it and actually, or take a knife to it and actually score these flagstone lines like into the side, because right now it's flat. But you could just take a knife and just kind of like chunk out a little bit of this side of the base and then paint it as if she's up on flagstones, and you can see all the, you can see where the flagstones go down. So like you could paint it, you could chunk out those parts and paint it like it's more 3D. You don't even have to really chunk out those parts. If you just want to paint it like it's 3D, that also works just fine, as you can see. But usually I like a kind of frame on my models, and usually a black base provides that. But since I'm not sure if I'm going to put her on one, for now it's just this dark. I can always repaint it if I want to. But I'm sick of it looking gray plastic, so. Honestly, Pendrake, I thought about sand, but I am not inspired at all on Jeannie's base. And if I am not inspired, I usually just paint it as is. Because I'm not going to force creativity. Like, there are some models I come in and I'm like, oh, I really want to do, this or that base. Like Sneck, when we did Sneck Lady. Then I knew I wanted to sculpt all around her base. And put her raised up a bit, and with water and stuff and stones. But if I don't have a strong concept, I usually don't even worry about it. Not on these. I kind of, to be honest, guys, it's actually part of why I think I like busts a lot. You can do backdrops on busts to give them that sort of sense of place. But I don't have to worry about basing on a bust. I only have to worry about what plinth looks good. And if I'm going to introduce like basing features onto the plinth, which is usually a bit more abbreviated and abstracted. So I kind of like that about busts, is that you don't have to worry about basing. You just paint the model. But Genie, honestly, like, I usually only want to add basing to models that I really, really like. And although Genie's cool and all, she's not one of my favorites. So, hey, Anvil, thanks for the sub with Prime. Paint bust basement. Yeah, sometimes, Jareth. I agree. I mean, there's always the minimalistic basing, like gaming basing, which is the sand and gravel with tufts of static grass. It always looks good. It never looks bad. And it's super fast and easy to do. So that was the default when I was doing, when I was doing armies back in the day. Hey, let me show you guys Snack Lady. For those who are not familiar with Snack, actually, we'll get on Spirit Beast too. Neither of them have gotten any additional work done on them. So here are two models that I really liked and decided to do more basing on. This is Snake Lady. Snake Lady comes on just a normal round, and she really takes up her entire normal base. So I decided to sculpt a rocky base around it. So essentially creating kind of a suggestion of water. I haven't done like any fill work or any poured gloss into it yet, although that is the plan. So she still is perfectly gameable. I just wanted more of a base on her, both for something to hold her and also to give her a sense of place. I really see her as like in a jungle kind of like river setting. I've got jungle plants. Yeah, she was also an OSL lighting subject. And she turned out so well with it, Jareth, that my boyfriend, who teaches OSL regularly, switched from his old model that he used to use for class to her. So yeah, we did this one a while ago, and she turned out really well. So I'm mucking about with, I need to get in a mood to work on jungle plants, and then I'll work on her. And then the other one is Spirit Beast. Spirit Beast, right now I just don't have the oomph to finish like the green work, but I sculpted, and you can see, actually this is a nice stage because you can see how I start the water with just basic shapes. And then you kind of introduce a little bit more. You usually bring in a little bit more detail when you've got your basic wave shape. You want to make sure you've got kind of some suggested shapes down here. And then when you've got your green work set, you bring in your colors and you bring in water effects. This is Woodland Scenic's water effects. So you can use the water effects in many different ways, but I wanted to use them to get kind of the water spray effect coming up like that. Moving, so you got the sense of motion of the water. So that's Spirit Beast. Those were both models that I really, really liked from the beginning, and so I chose to do more basing on them because I had great ideas for them. But if I don't have an idea for a piece on here, I'm not going to push myself to do it. What I've found is that it just doesn't work for me. Like, if I start something, I'll never finish it. I'll put it aside just because I lose interest or I don't really like the model. So I've decided kind of to not do any. And by not like the model, I just mean I'm not like totally into it. Because basing is a lot of extra work, as many of you know. And if you don't have like a big creative vibe on it, it can be a chore. And so yeah. Genie is Genie, and I really like how parts of her have turned out. She's pretty much how I envisioned her. But she's not one of my favorites. So I didn't really enter in with a very strong concept on her. Other than that, I wanted to do colors. Like, there were colors I wanted to do for her. And that's turned out well. Hey, Roger, how's it going? 9 months, thanks for the resub. Yeah, I get it, Basement Forge. I mean, the thing about the sand and gravel approach is just that all you have to do is throw glue on the base and dip and have a tub of basing stuff and just throw them in there. and let them sit while you're working on something else. It's not like you paint all your models at the same time. So you can set up basing and just let the models kind of, sit in the sand tub with glue on their base and let things adhere and not really worry about it. So I was like that, because I always liked a little bit of finishing on my bases for armies or for gaming models, just a little bit, something, so that it looked nice, but not anything that would take too much time. The other thing that's nice is some companies like Secret Weapon does a lot of resin bases, and of course Games Workshop puts out some plastic ones, but landscaped bases, previously landscaped bases, like stuff that they pre-sell, are easy and fast to just like paint and dry brush. That's too bad, Basement Forge. That's sad. That's sad. Your models are like, oh, please paint us. Just a little bit. I always think they look sad when they're not painted. That's cool. I mean, you can really like Jeannie. It's just that she's my Jeannie, but I'm just like, meh, she's cool. And it's just like, I mean, if you think about it, you probably have models that you've painted that you're like, yeah, that's cool. And then models you've painted where you're like, oh yeah, this one really turned out. I love this one. Like Snack for me. For me, that's Snack. Even though Snack, you could argue that Snake Lady is not the quality of paint job that Jeannie is. Like, Jeannie's got a lot more layering and a lot more blending and, a lot more work in her. But I just really like Snake Lady. So, it's a thing. It's like looking at a lineup of girls or guys and going, none of those, really, but that person I want to get to know better, right? It's like that. It's like sometimes it's just the model really appeals to you on some level. And sometimes you start out going meh, and then it ends up to be one of your favorite models by the end of it. Like, you can't predict it. Oh, cool. Excellent, Basement Forge. Hey, Masara, thanks for that resub. 16 months. Sweet. Oh yeah, good point. Thank you, Jareth. Yeah, not having a 3D printer, it's not my instant mental go-to. So thanks for the reminder that there are a ton of people doing fantastic pre-made bases out there on 3D printers. Alrighty. Cool. So she looks a lot more finished. We haven't done any highlighting on the stone, but it's still cool. And it's the same color roughly as some of the highlights on the black. Like, it's got some of that blue in there. So it harmonizes with the hair highlights, the shield highlight back there on the back. And of course, it is the color of the sword, more or less. Oh, I was going to mix up some pure white. That's right. I was yelling at everybody that you can't do NMM without pure white. So, yeah, 3D printers are a whole other can of worms, so I haven't gone in on it. That and David and I don't have, like, the room right now. I could see us getting a nice high-quality resin printer, maybe. When we, like, if we get a house or a much larger place. But right now, I think it's not in our cards. So I'm just watching everybody else with much envy. But don't worry, if we get a resin printer, guys, the first thing I'm going to do is get on here and ask you guys who are the best, like, Patreons and websites to go to for STL files that are awesome. I already know a couple just from kind of looking on Etsy. Like, I love White Werewolf Tavern. And there was one that was doing really good dragons. But yeah, and that's my big problem too, Jareth. That is a really big problem because we don't have great ventilation in this apartment. We don't have like the garage is the best place, right? For good ventilation, and we have no garage. We were in an apartment. So that's why I say maybe when we get a house, it's nice enough weather out here where we live that we could, have something like that in the garage for the year. Morning, Inara. That's true. And when you have extra weapons, you could always turn them into spell effects. All right, I want my white a little bit strong because I need to do highlights that are solid on this. I don't want to have to put 15 layers on it. Let's see, what brush do we want to use today? Maybe I'll use Tiny Brush. Yeah, but it's still Monly. I don't have the room. I don't have, like, space for it. We don't have time for it. and it's toxic. It's like all these no's that I'm just not going to go for. And that, and like just cleaning up the prints. Like David would have to like seriously enjoy cleaning up the prints, because I would not. I'm like, I like to just open my box and get my mini and be able to work it with a minimum of prep and green work. Oh, nice. That's great, Bryce. I didn't know that. So Bryce says Andy Pieper did a great tutorial on resin printers at Reaper Online Expo. I hope he does it again at ReaperCon, Bryce. Maybe I'll sign up. I'm curious. I'm just not invested. And I really want to learn more about like how much of a pain in the butt it can be, and how much of a pain in the butt maybe it's been exaggerated to be. So that sounds great. Plus Andy's a great teacher. Oh, it's on YouTube? Fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure there's filters, Monley. It's just, again, you gotta have the room, and you gotta like be like willing to do the toxic stuff. I am notorious for like not embracing stuff that's toxic. Even if there are ways around it, you're still putting stuff into the environment. You may not be breathing it, but you know, the world is. So I just tend to go as non-toxic as I can in most. It's why I don't use like solvent-based paints or anything. I grew up using like turpentine oil paints, and I swore never again, pretty much. If I never smell turpentine again, it'll be too soon. I went to art school and was immersed in bad fumes, and they didn't bother to give us good ventilation either back in those days. So I don't know. I don't mind it. I'm willing to look at it. I understand that it's toxic. I understand there are ways you can filter and, you know, help with that aspect. Right now, I think I'm going to hold off and learn more. Plus, there's always the chance that maybe they come up with a material that's similar to resin, but that doesn't have the toxicity problem, or not as much of one. I would be very interested in that. So I'm just kind of figuring out this sword here. It's got a groove down the middle. Yes, that's what I figured, Declearman. Cleanup can be a pain, but it's also overstated, right? Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'll watch the VOD if I get some time. Right. Yeah, David and I are trying to tune down our buying. I didn't go in on some of the latest Kickstarters, even though I was interested in a couple of models, just because I was like trying to just work with all of the beautiful things I already have. How about that? So right now I'm just going to put an edge around this. Kind of trying to figure out, I think I missed part of that groove. Yeah, I don't know. And neither David or I are big on cleaning. So, like, we managed to keep ahead and make our apartment look neat because it's like a joint effort. Okay, so the groove does actually go out to the end of the sword now that I'm looking at it really closely. So I'm going to actually bring that out. It was not filling. It was like a little burble in the plastic out here. So I'm going to do... Oh, she's a little bit... I managed to straighten the sword, like, out a little bit, but apparently it was also curvy that way. Oh, well, we have a curvy sword. We're just going to say that's intentional. Because at this point... Yeah, for sure, Mondley. I get it. Yeah, that's the other thing. Pendrake also brings up a point. I do like supporting my fellow artists and the people who enable our hobby. And so buying from somebody who is making a side gig of 3D printing and who does a very good job at it is rewarding to me. So that's what I've done so far. If I wanted a 3D printed model, like my, like this lady. Big Knoll bust. I really love her. I am actually waiting to get some good black primer before I prime her and get her going. I was talking to David about that because we've got like automotive primer, but when it comes down to it, I just don't trust it. Like, it's already clogged once. I'm like, if I were working on a competition model, and gotten a clog and clump spray, I would be so pissed. So I think it's just important sometimes to choose a primer, either use brush on or choose a primer that you trust or airbrush. I don't airbrush, so Stynylrez is not an option for me. Plus, to be fair, I don't like the surface of the Stynylrez as much as I like the surface of some other stuff. And that's a very individual. Yeah, female null bust, right, Rain? Like, where do you get those? Like, when I saw that sucker, I was sold. I can blame Dee Clearman on that one. He totally showed it to me or mentioned it, and I looked it up. Yeah, exactly, Quindy. That's exactly it. Like, I really enjoy encouraging people to help out our hobby like that and to make a buck at it. Like, I think there's nothing, like, that's cool for me. So I'm all for enabling the people who are like, whoa, I have a 3D printer and I could make a little side money off of this. Absolutely. All about it. Give those people my money. They give me a nice product. I'm all happy. Sweet, Otter Mama. Glad you're here. But yeah, so that null bust is really cool. She's on, I know how I want to paint her, so she's on my list. But again, I need to get some better black primer. Some of these I want to do a sketch, an underlying sketch. Usually I use white or light gray primer. And I may use gray on her. I'm not sure. She's one I'm kind of going back and forth on. I have some cool Japanese foxes, kitsune foxes, that I want to do with Zenith, though. And I can't prime them until I get a decent primer, I feel. So I may go wandering off to the game store this weekend. All right, so kind of just figuring out portion, like, if this is not NMM in any way, shape, or mean at this point, it's more me kind of figuring out what are the surfaces on this sword. And then we're going to work with it. So the top of the sword, though, does need to be that lighter gray color. Yeah, Jareth, for sure. Cool, that's good to know, Pendrake. Look at Reaper's Discord for 3D printing. That's great. Yeah, I think they canceled it, Otter. I'm clinging to my last 2 cans. I don't use any other spray varnish, Otter. I use the Reaper brush on sealer. If I can't find Dull Coat anymore, I have never found any other spray sealer that had the good finish and thin coat of Dull Coat. And if I can't find it anymore, I'm going all to brush on. So Reaper brush on sealer thinned about 5 or 6 to 1 with water, applied with a brush gently. I would say probably about 5 to 1 is what I usually do, actually. But I have strong opinions on spray sealers. However, that said, Otter Mama, it depends on why you're sealing. Like if it's a gaming piece, there are other sealers you could probably find. But if you're doing a display piece where you really do want it to be as flat as possible, I mean, maybe some other company will step up with a true matte sealer, but I've just seen, yeah, you can. Absolutely, Otter. Any Reaper paint can be applied through an airbrush very easily. Just thin with water. All right, so essentially I'm going to flat highlight all of the upper surface of this blade. You've still got some angled surfaces coming off the side. But all of that top surface is going to be lighter. What ratio would you use, Dee Clearman? I was thinking maybe a 4 to 1. Because it's already a thinner product. Or have you not worked with that one? Anybody worked with Reaper brush on sealer through an airbrush got a ratio? Yeah, that's what I don't like, NGC, is that in both the surfaces and the art industry, matte does not mean matte. It actually means eggshell or satin. It's just a relative more matte than a gloss, or a semi-gloss, which I just don't like. It has to be dead matte for me, or it has to be the sheen of Reaper paint, which is actually a tick up from dead matte. It's about an eggshell. Can't have any sheen though. Like not noticeable sheen. Has to have no more sheen than the paint itself does. Because for a display model, sheen kills all of your details. Fair enough, although I do recommend adding a little extra brush on to areas that you deem are very vulnerable to rub off, depending. Because that's a big model. And those tentacles, if you notice that you're always touching it in a particular place to lift it and carry it, you probably want to put a little extra on there. Otherwise, do be aware that as you build up layers with a spray, and this includes dull coat after a point, but with any spray varnish, as you build up layers, it will begin to get shinier and shinier, even if it is a matte product, because of the nature of how a matte effect is produced. So do be aware that there's diminishing returns in doing multiple layers after a point. You can do it up to a point. Yeah, if you're doing big stuff, for sure. I just switched to a bigger brush. Pressure you spray. You don't thin much because you spray at 40. Yeah. The Lovejoy method. Let's just call it what it is. Cred to Erin. I believe in giving cred to people who have taught me to do stuff. I think it's a good habit to get into in this hobby, to always give your mentor a callback. Like, always be sure to say, yeah, I learned this really cool technique, and I learned it from X. Just because we have so many wonderful people taking a lot of their time and energy to teach in the hobby. And giving them a shout out is just, like, real cool. It's good. It's just good practice. Good human practice. So as you progress in your painting journey, if you someday find yourself teaching, be sure to tell people, like, who were some of your most valuable teachers, like who you learned this cool technique from. If you developed it yourself, then awesome, say so. But, all right, so now I've got my edges defined. You can see I've got a little bit of a darker color in there. I've got kind of everything worked. Now what we do is we take real thin white on a simple sword like this that's flat toward the sky. And we're gonna edge it. And this is something even like the top painters do. They'll do, they do a white edge around the sword. And on the facets as well. So we'll get there. But I'm just using the side of my brush to gently put that white edge on there. And you want to have very little paint on your brush. Yes, you should have, Grey Wolf. AK Ultra Matte Varnish. Can brush or airbrush? Maybe. I've had mixed results with AK, but I'm willing to give it a try. Although I'm so happy with the Reaper brush on sealer, it's probably a moot point. And if I want the matte sealer, this is a good point, guys. If you want the Reaper matte sealer to be more matte, add some of our anti-shine additive. Tiny bit. Tiny bit. That stuff goes it's so strong. There we go. Thanks, Quindy, for the link to that. And you can also, on the heels of that, if you want the PDF that I did a short PDF just summarizing the paint consistencies and stuff, you can go to my Patreon and get it for free. Patreon.com/paintingbig. And you should find the PDF under the public files if you are not currently a patron. And you should be able to sort if you are a patron. It should allow you to sort by public posts, because it's a public post. Anybody can get it. It's free. You do not have to be a patron. Although I love and appreciate all of you who are my patrons. Working on a video for your $2 tier right now. So I'm doing the same edging thing, guys, because this groove is sculpted into the sword. I can just kind of put paint on and use the edge of my brush. You want to make sure you've got very little paint on the brush, just to pick up this edge and not have to freehand it. Now, as I get down toward the end where I did have to do a bit of freehand, I'm going to have to get a little bit more narrow. But as you can see, the sword is actually coming up very nicely. Not enough coffee. Not enough caffeine here either, Jelly. I had some actual coffees when I was on the road with David last weekend for our holiday. And now even though it's not great for my guts, I do miss the caffeination level. Though with me, it's always dangerous because it can make me a little manic. All right, so we've got a little white line around, and I'm going to extend it because the tip of the sword usually comes to a peak, and sometimes it's rounded on some designs. But this one does seem to have an edge that kind of goes out to the tip. Some swords do have a more rounded or blunted tip, and they don't have that little peak. And that got a little wide, so I'm going to touch it up, but first I'm going to go and strengthen my white line back here. Thank you, Quindy, for the link to my Patreon. I started out on this assuming it was a $2 video, but maybe it's a different video, but I'm doing demonic skin this month. So red skin tones, red-based skin tones. We did one previously on frost-based and green skins. I may have done that for $10. I don't know, but I'm doing a demonic one. It's for somebody. I don't know who, because I can't remember from month to month what I do for my Patreon. I'm like, that's a great topic. I'm going to do that. So now I'm adding some more of that light gray to kind of blend in that white. I don't want it to be really stark. I want it to be there, but I want it to blend in just a little bit. This is very minute touches of detail to spend on. If this was a gaming model, then you probably wouldn't want to blow so much time getting the sword just, to be super pretty and perfect. But it's a chibi, so why not? She's so simple. You could afford to spend a little extra time on her. So that makes our blade shiny. Now, kind of look at, she's pointing it, or it is flopping at any rate, a bit down. So that means that if we have, and also this edge is maybe a little bit more up tilted than the other. So now we're going to introduce an irregularity, because usually when light hits a surface, it's going to kind of do so and disrupt. See that band? It's going to disrupt the surface because the light is going to be hitting one particular angle and it's going to be strongest on one part of the blade. So since we did a white outline around everything and a white line down the middle here, that helps blend this in for us right off the bat. So I'm going to make it stronger up top and blend it into that line. And if I blorf a little bit, then I'm going to clean that up in a bit. But first I want to get this defined. And this is really, this sort of irregularity, the irregular highlighting, is what really can make a blade look realistic. We're not going to add any extra shadows necessarily in here to offset it. We may take a little bit of our original bluish, we may actually grab a little more blue and do a little bit of a skylight. But you won't really get shadows on a sword like aiming up unless you're in like an alley or a narrow place with things crisscrossing overhead in a natural setting, which I suppose you could get, but usually you won't necessarily see it on upward facing area. Let me just add a little bit of gray to this and a little bit of white. When using blue for sky effects or suggesting a sky effect, you want to, wrong blue. You want to gray it out a little bit because it is being reflected off of this sword. And this sword is not a chrome surface. I wanted to go a little darker, so I'm going to mix in a little bit of darker blue. Kind of mixing like a night, like an evening sky color. Grab some water. And then thin it down. This is still not quite as gray as I would like it. I'm going to add a drop of carbon gray because I want it dark. Yeah, normally I would go for a much lighter. Normally if I want sky color Jareth, I'm going for something more like this. So definitely not a daylight sky. There, that grayed out that blue a nice nice bit. That's more like it. Carbon gray in action. Seriously, great color. Charcoal gray. Get it? Buy me! Buy me! Keep me in print, it says. Anne loves me. I must stay in print. Vote with your dollars. Alright, let's see here. So now I'm going to grab some of that. Grab it, put it up on top of my palette. Mix in some of my metal color. Thin it down a lot. You do need a little bit of dark here. But gotta be careful not to wipe out other stuff. I want this blue over here with some white. Working on tiny surfaces like this with NMM can be a bit of a pain. Where you're just like, seriously? Tiny sword, seriously? Yep. Yeah, that's one of Kirill's things. That's what he likes to do, stuff like that. He's done several models now where he's reflected like other enemy soldiers or like people coming at the target, at the model in the armor. He's very good at it. It's not actually that hard. But you have to be very cognizant of the angles of your NMM to do it right. I'm going to introduce a line here. Really spending a lot of time on this sword because I don't want it to just be a phone in. I want it to look good. So just back and forth tuning because it's so small. Once again, I've gotten a little bit blurfy here, so I'm going to bring in my white to refine that line. But yeah, Kirill's NMM is exemplary. He is very on target, always with his highlights and reflections and shadows. Just trying to get some of this darker color here. Yeah, you know though, Jelly, as long as you get close on the distortion, it's not like somebody's gonna grab a helmet and hold it up and, you know, test you on it. Although with Kirill, he does a lot. I've heard with 3D programs. So he may actually be putting, testing it that way, which is fair. But what I find is that as long as you can make it look believable, even if it's not strictly correct, you're good. What I guess another way to say that is distortion works for you, not against you. Because if it's a rounded surface, you can get away with a little bit more. So I'm using my tiny brush. If I was using a larger brush, I would probably be going at this a little bit differently. This is a thing where the size of the brush that you use on an area may well influence the way you paint it. If you're not paying attention, you may not notice it. But when I am using a smaller brush, I am definitely focusing more on very small areas than I might otherwise. I would be more inclined with a larger brush to generalize this area. But because I have a smaller brush, I'm going in tighter on detail than I might otherwise. And that's a subconscious decision. It's something that I did not actively try to do, but noticed I was doing as I painted. Doing that, switching to a smaller brush, helps me become a better painter back in the day when I was seriously trying to become competition level. Because what it made me do is it made me focus on small detail that I otherwise was inclined to brush over. So you may try that tactic. Use different brushes. Try a big brush, try a tiny brush. Learn how to use both. They're both sometimes better for slightly different things. There, got a little bit of reflection. On the back side, I'm going to do a little bit more. Let's see, maybe toward the end of the blade. Don't make your highlights symmetrical. And this one's going to be less because it's kind of pointed behind. And I'm not going to take it up as high. These little back bands. I'm going to concentrate more on that shadow. Something small like this. What's worth pointing out about Kirill's effect of reflecting the battlefield is also that it's something you can only do on large busts. It is most effective when you have a large area. Doing something like this, if the chibi had a helmet, the helmet might be big enough. But you need a big flat area to really effectively do that. Just trying to get some of this all blended in. A little bit of a darker shadow there. Lost a little bit of my transition. Gonna put it back in. Yeah, something like this tiny little thing you couldn't. I mean, yeah, if she had a big rounded helmet on, you could do it. But I think on most 28s it would be very difficult unless it was a big monster. Then also you want to, choose whether you're going to do that effect also based on is it appropriate for the model. Sometimes you don't want a lot of very shiny metal because that's what you need to get that sort of thing, is the metal has to be fairly shiny. Once again, always coming back and edging, re-edging my blade. So it's got little shinies. Little shinies. You can see more variance in my real world set. That's a little better. Now you can see it. So that's probably enough for the top part, at least. With chibis, you don't need to do super realism. You just want it to kind of look cool. And so much of the time you're working on very small features, except with the face. Ah, blorf. But you can scrub that off really easy. There. So you don't necessarily want to like lavish a crap ton of time on the NMM on a chibi. Just enough to make it look cool and to make it look shiny. With the exception of places like back here, where I wanted to bring out that cool wing design. Haha! One of your minis looks cool. Yeah. It's just gotta look cool. Does not have to be the pinnacle of all painting for you to be happy with it. For when David and I relax when we were painting just like board game minis or just like putting a fast paint job on a model, like I've got some I went in on a Kickstarter. I mentioned them earlier, my Japanese kitsune foxes. And they're totally going to be quick painted, like relatively quick painted. But they can still look cool. They're just not going to be like Templars level. All right, bottom side of the sword. You're going to kind of invert it. I'm going to keep it pretty dark. I am going to hit that groove though. That blood groove down the middle with shadow color. I'm going to grab it. I need to drop some water in. Oh, it's stretch time. 1 second. It do be stretch time. I'm going to get this and then we'll do it. Didn't put enough dark on that. You just paint in the shadows. Like, if I noticed that I hadn't put enough dark or I'd lost my dark back here, I would just go back and paint that dark in. And, like, it's, just because I'm bringing up a lot of highlights here doesn't mean I can't bring in more shadows. Like, I did drop more shadows back here. So, you can always tune it either way. It just, you may want to switch to a small brush and be more, to be more precise, like I'm using this guy. This is a 3/0 Da Vinci. It's the smallest brush that I use. It's equivalent to about an 0.10 in Reaper or a 00 in Winsor Newton Series 7. Brushes, brush companies all having generally different scales, annoyingly. I've got my paint quite thin here. With a color like walnut, where I'm using this walnut and kind of Ritterlich mixture, those are both very strong paints that'll stand up to a lot of thinning. Yeah. I mean, just be careful. And with orange, because it's hard to cover if you mess up basement, if you do blorf it, if your dark lines get out of the lines and you need to touch it up, first put down a thin layer of white, then put your orange over the top. The white will cover over the dark line a lot easier than your orange will, and it should erase it pretty easily. So just use, you need thin your white, don't use it full strength. You don't need it very much, you just need a little bit, and you don't want to leave texture. That can happen, you can use that trick with reds, oranges, and yellows. Usually you don't need it for a lot of the others, but because red, orange, and yellow tend to be lighter, brighter, and don't have the great coverage, it's so much easier to just, if you blorf with a dark color over the top of them, just put down white over it, kind of like you're using an eraser, and then put your red, orange, or yellow over the top. It works really well for corrections. I am going to stretch. I'm also going to return Wyvern up to the shelf because he kind of like keeps poking his nose over and I don't want to boop him. me put, your paint time is tomorrow, Wyvern. Get back on the shelf. I'll return Snack and Spirit Beast. All right, stretchies. It's stretchy time. She's getting there. She's getting there. We'll get that sword done. She's almost done. Like, she's really getting close. Really just a bit more NMM and, yeah, flagstone base. I don't know. I actually think it's a girl, but I haven't decided for sure, which is why I keep switching genders on the Wyvern. Julie herself didn't know. If the sculptor doesn't know, I'm open to being ambivalent. Get up and stretch. If you have a moment, it's good for you. But yeah, I kind of think of the Wyvern as a girl, but who knows? I have not decided in my head. It does not really matter. All right, floor exercises, and I'll be right back. All right. Sweet. I think I'll do some highlighting on the base too. Because if I can get her base and her sword done today, then all we have left is just the tail end of the NMM. And then she'll be done and we can move on to our next model. Did I show you? I don't think I showed you guys the next model yet. I definitely have hims and hers. What the heck is that beeping noise? Oh dear, the Amazon Prime truck has murdered its beeper. Like its speaker is blown out. That's funny. It sounds like a static beep. But it's leaving, so I'm not going to close the window because it's nice and cool in here. What do I want? I want glasses. It's an angry bird. Yeah, I definitely assign genders to my models if they don't come with them sometimes, but... Oh, I guess we haven't really done the leather pouch either. And I did see some areas I wanted to touch up back here. It's always nice to have your shadow color, like, mixed up. Just your generic shadow color. In my case, this is walnut. So that you can block in little areas in the shadows and nooks that you maybe didn't paint. Or missed. Alright, little sword. This is the underside of the blade. Yeah, I was gonna show you the new model, but I decided to just tease you and be done. So here we're gonna go more gray blue. And we're gonna go more... Just gonna block in some alternating light and shadow. Reflections. The color down here is not going to be as bright. It will not go up to pure white. It may go up to kind of a pale blue-gray. Somebody is training their dog outside, but I couldn't see who it was. Oh, I think it might be my friend, the golden retriever spoiled princess. You can always tell when a dog owner is kind of frustrated with their dog when people ask, "Oh, how's your dog doing?" And they're like, "Well, we're doing okay, or we're improving, or we're doing well." And then the dog has a moment and they're like, "Arg." It's funny. There. So lighter than, lighter than the surrounds, but still darker than the up top highlight. You don't want to go as bright because you don't have full light down here. Another way to paint this model would be like with a candle or a torchlight effect, since she's a vampire. But that would have, doing that changes all your colors, because if you have an orange or yellow light on the model, everything else is going to reflect that, and it'll change the colors that you're free to use. So instead I chose to paint this model kind of in neutral, without a strong lighting effect, because it let me use the color suggestions I wanted. For instance, if we were using a torchlight, it would have made her skin very yellow. We would have lost the green. Things like that, so. We'll get that edge. Kind of figure out where that edge is. Sometimes it's, the sculpt isn't real clean on some of this stuff. Like especially if you missed a mold line or something, then you go to kind of catch an edge highlight with your brush and it gets wobbly like it just did. And then you just have to go and touch it up. Ah, Sam. The best thing you can do with an anxious dog is to become less anxious yourself. So if you're stressed out, your dog will pick up on it. Always, 100%. Dogs are so good at body language. So the best thing you can do is try to become a more confident person. If you're already very confident, just keep working with your dog. But I learned that the hard way because I had a dog who was very reactive. And I learned that when I was more confident in my own carriage and I stopped worrying so much, he got a lot better. So there was a lot that I could directly do to help my dog. And I'm not a canine behavioral psychologist or anything, or even a trainer. I'm just somebody who's raised 4 very different dogs at this point and helped a lot of my puppy people with their dogs. So take my stuff with a grain of salt if you wish. I will not take offense. Oh, is it a spoiled golden? Because this one that I know is the Princess Golden Retriever, Bryce. She's her name is I think she's about 7 months now, maybe 8 months. And oh my god, spoiled princess dog still has a jumping problem. Like, it's very obvious that her mom spoils the heck out of her. Her mom's a nurse. She actually does COVID shots. I've become friends with them because I've kind of helped them with Harvey a little bit. Because it helps when you've got, like, a passerby who knows how to deal with your dog's bad habits and who doesn't feed them. So I try to help when I see them out and about. Because Harvey's not going to get away with jumping on me. And when she tries to be really bad-mannered, I am not adverse to calling her on it. So she it's a weird thing, because she's a golden retriever, so she still likes to see me, but she, like, gives up on her bad behavior very quickly after we first engage. She's like, oh, this doesn't work with this person. I need to find somebody I can misbehave with. And you know she's got the sweet face that Goldens have. They can wrap you around their little paws, and they're super smart. Jump on things, Pendrake. She jumps up. Jumps up on people. And for a big dog, that's a big no. It's something you really need to break early. And unfortunately, when you live in an apartment complex, your neighbors aren't always going to know how to react to that in the way to discourage it. Or they're not going to feel comfortable doing the action. And I was fine with doing the action because I'm just like, here, this is how you do this. This is how you train your dog not to do this. But with jumping, it really does take somebody who's willing to be assertive to your dog. And if people are intimidated by your bigger dog, it can be very difficult to train your dog not to jump because your dog will get away with it more than they don't get away with it. I step into the dog. I turn sideways to the dog and I step right into him. Knock him over. I'll ask the owner to put him on the grass before I approach the dog so that I don't knock them over on, like, cement. But absolutely. Big assertive step into the dog. Show the dog that you're not going to allow them to take up space. It's a very effective... Using your body sends a stronger signal to the dog than any amount of no, or bad dog does. And you keep very neutral about it. Like, you don't get angry about it. Don't get angry at the dog. You just keep really neutral, but you make it clear to the dog that you are not going to allow them to get away with that behavior. And if they try to jump up on you, you're going to knock them backwards. Or you're going to push them backwards. You're essentially saying, no, I'm sorry. I am in charge of this encounter. You will not have fun if you continue in this behavior. There we go. That's got a little bright down there, I think. Yeah, see, that's the good thing. Yeah, that's and with a big dog like a GSD, right, Trouble? Because I had shepherds. It's kind of your responsibility as a dog owner, right? Because big dogs are scary to a lot of people, and a well-behaved big dog is really an ambassador for big dogs everywhere. There are so many poorly behaved dogs out there. And I feel sad because it just gives dogs a worse name. There we go. So we've got a little bit of a shine down there. See? Shiny. So now we can go over to the other side and do the same. It's still not up as high a light as it is on the top. The top is very bright. The bottom is more dark. Turn your back, or what do you do, Pendrake, for the wolf thing? Sometimes wolf speak is based on body blocking and body language, so. But you also got to remember that dogs aren't necessarily wolves. They don't have as much brain power. Yeah, Trouble for sure. Yeah, Mastiffs for sure, because those are big dogs. Yeah, so many people were scared of our dogs just because they were big shepherds that it was just a no-brainer to get them as well behaved as we possibly could. There we go, a little bit more light, but friendlier. Well, I mitigate the response depending on the severity of the dog, Pendrake. Understand that? It depends on, with Princess Dog, who just keeps doing it, who is like doesn't learn the first time, you have to be very assertive. But with a puppy who maybe doesn't understand, you just kind of bowl them over, and then when they sit, you're not. And the minute they act good, you always praise them to the sky. you're always just like, good girl, good boy, you know. You do have to watch it because, like with Harvey the Golden, some dogs, when they get praised, they get super excited. So you have to kind of figure out if your dog has kind of like, if I use an excited voice with Harvey, she'll just go over the moon again. So I have to like give her a very calm, good girl, you know. Whereas with another dog, you might be able to go, good girl, you know, with a really high voice that dogs tend to like. But yeah, so you definitely do mitigate. I mean, if I sound unfriendly there, it's because, you know, when I'm dealing with a 7 or 8 month old spoiled brat of a dog, I'm not going to tolerate it. But if you're dealing with a young pup, absolutely be friendlier about it. Yeah, we're doing shiny, Dabber. Oh yeah, that would be Mastiffs. Somebody decided they couldn't control the dog and it got away. Oh. They are very nice dogs, like as far as friendly, low-key. But they are big. I think the important thing to remember about dogs is actually something that Pendrick kind of highlights there is like every dog is different. And you got to figure out when you're trying to train your dog what makes your dog tick. What are maybe your dog's triggers for bad behavior or good behavior? All right, so there we go. So we've got still a darker surface, but with a little bit of reflection. That's probably all we need. And then we've got our top surface with mostly light, but a little bit of reflection on the offside. And then this front edge, there's always this area that's real thin, but it's because the sword can't be too thin, right? So on this kind of flat edge, which you would normally never find in a real sword, because of course it would be burnished out to a real edge. And kind of decide how to obscure it. Sometimes I paint it dark and sometimes I paint it light. Sometimes I leave it a little dark. Sometimes I kind of buff it out as it goes toward the tip of the sword, so you don't notice that there's this little flat edge here. Sometimes I'll utilize it if it makes the sword look better head on to kind of just accentuate and make it its own surface. What you choose to do to deal with it is up to you. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting another dog down the road. I've gotten to the point where the last couple dogs I raised are exemplary canine citizens, so I feel like I could have a really good dog this time because I've learned how to deal with them. It took a long time to learn doggy wrangling. But now I feel like I could handle anything. Which is the ironic thing as a dog owner. Because on the one hand, you know enough that you could help a troubled dog. But on the other hand, you really just want a well-balanced dog to deal with because you've had dogs that were crazy before. So, like, it's this, like, dichotomy of the people who don't know dogs are the people you usually want to place your best, most stable dog with, just because anything else they're probably not going to have success with. But really, you should want your stable dog in the hands of somebody who could make them an amazing dog. You know, it's this kind of like dichotomy that you run into. There. So I'm just going to leave a little bit of that dark edge in there. Boxers are nice dogs. Very athletic. Nice, stable temperaments in general. They need a fairly assertive owner. Usually. Can be a little stubborn sometimes. But that's the case with many working breeds. But yeah, I love watching them move because boxers have a nice, typically have an easy athleticism about them. That's very enjoyable to watch. Yeah, they are great with kids. Absolutely. Just really stable temperaments, right? In general. You always say in general because there's always exceptions, but in general. Gotta love a really stable, good dog. There we go. Yeah, big fan of boxers. That's too bad, Valandar. There are a few good ones out there, but you have to do your homework. And it's hard. Like, it's hard. I mean, as myself, someone who was a breeder, it is hard to know who to trust. I mean, the best sign is if you're talking to a breeder and if your dog essentially, if they say that they have a health guarantee, where if your dog comes up with a genetic problem within 2 or 3 years, they'll refund all your money. That's a really good sign. That means they're in it for the long haul and they're really, trying their best they're trying their best to minimize that sort of issue. If they seem to have well-behaved dogs themselves, so you know that they know their, training and raising, that's another good sign. But it's hard. It's really hard. I mean, for a while there, I was kind of looking at Australian cattle dogs in case I couldn't have another Shiloh, but finding a good breeder, it's like a crapshoot. Trying to ride on your boxer. That's funny. Are you talking about models that are actually transparent plastic or ones that you want them to appear clear, Basement? Because I can't answer that appear clear thing because it would take too long. Like, we're already down to our last, 10 minutes. Like, it's the ones that are clear. If you look, Basement, on the Reaper YouTube, look for a water weird that I did a long time ago, like over 2 years ago, I think, or about 2 years ago. It was back in the old Reaper Toolbox days. I think it was still Pro-Tips. Yeah, because I think I was working on it when I was just my last days in Denton. So maybe about 1.5 years ago. I don't think I've still got it. But I can't give you like the best I can say is leave a lot of the model clear. And remember that anytime you put paint on it, you're going to darken the whole, the transparent plastic around it or on the other side because you're keeping light from entering because the paint is opaque. It will block light. But on the water weird, you can see me kind of working with that and choosing and targeting which areas of the model I want to put paint over and leaving other areas clear or using thinned paint to do shadows, like thinned clear brights. Oh, did you get it? All right, cool. Yay, Quindy. All right. So Quindy to the rescue. There you go. Just click on that link that Quindy put right under your question. Because Quindy is awesome. But yeah, I don't enjoy painting the translucent models as much because ideally you don't put much paint on them. So I did that one because it was my favorite translucent plastic model and hopefully you can get some tips from there. Hey, no problem. We try to rock. We hope to aspire to rocking. Yep. Yeah, that's what my breed does, Valandar. We're adding in other breeds. The Shiloh Shepherd, at least our particular group, the ISSA. And I was spearheading that. I spearheaded our genetics study with UC Davis, and my name is on the report. But yeah, we introduced a Poodle Wetterhound cross, and we are working on introducing a Belgian Tervuren. We were trying to do a Malamute, but the Malamute fell through, so now we're looking at a couple other places. We looked at a Samoyed as well. So yeah, I think that the smart breeds are realizing that inbreeding is not a great thing and that they're working with that. Yeah, Quindy's awesome. Quindy rocks. But there's still a huge pushback against that sort of thing in purebred circles, which is sad. Is people who like the status quo and who don't see a problem and who get scared about change. Hey, Quindy's all right. We'll let you get away with that, Quindy, but I don't know. I don't know if I agree to Quindy bashing or Quindy, Quindy minimizing because, even if you are Quindy. I'm just going to try a little quick wet blend here. A little bit too light. There we go. A little bit, just lightening up this, the front floor tiles a bit. You don't need to do much to flagstones, just a little bit of highlight. Usually figure out where your light is coming from. It's usually coming slightly from the front, so hit the front edge of the flagstones a little stronger than you do. But it is a bulldog or a pug. See, that's the thing, Valandar. Okay, so just to totally go off on a tiny tangent, a breed simply is a designator that says the dog breeds true. If you mix other dogs into a bulldog or a pug, by the time you're 4th generation down, you're back up to about 95, 94% bulldog or pug. So for me, if the dog is breeding true, if it looks like a bulldog or a pug and it acts like a bulldog or a pug, it is one. That's it. I guess I hate to say I don't believe in purebred dogs anymore, but I believe that the concept that once you mix in another dog, it's no longer an X. I think that's erroneous. I think we need to get past that thinking. I think that's what led to the problems in the first place. Over in Europe, they've got a lot more open mind about this, and they're doing a lot of outcrossing to preserve like national heritage breeds mostly. But a lot of breeds are doing it. So I think, yeah, clavicus, exactly. On the nose. All dogs are 100% dog. And when you do some work into the genetics, as I have, and you realize how few genes really go into making up the differences between the breeds as we know them, even between a Chihuahua and a Great Dane, you realize that all dogs are dog. And at that point, purebred is just breeding true. Can I breed these two dogs? Will they look, if I breed these two collies who have other breeds, 4 generations back, will the puppies look and act like collies? Then they're collies. I mean, that's the way they used to do it, when they would just mix in a little bit of dog X that they liked, into a coonhound program or, hunting dog program. So I think it's switching the mindset there. That's most important, is getting away from that. If you mix in another breed, it's no longer an X. I believe pretty strongly that our dogs are still going to be Shiloh Shepherds, even though we're mixing in Samoyed, Tervuren, and Poodle. Because 5 generations from now, you won't be able to tell them apart from the 100% Shepherds. Another way to think of it is that all modern breeds were created by mixing other breeds. So it's just time that has given those breeds purebred status. Just my opinion. Yeah. I think the original domestication of dogs was maybe similar, right? Just dogs started hanging around human trash heaps and stuff. And then people, started keeping the puppies and actually breeding them toward a purpose. Or capitalizing on a purpose, something they were good at. Yeah, but cats is funny. I mean, it explains a lot, right? Cats are like, yeah, you humans, you would do a botch of this, so we're going to do it ourselves. It is pretty awesome. So just a little bit of flagstone highlighting goes a long way. So look, I've just done a little bit of blending and then a little bit of an edge highlighting on these flagstones, and they look good. They're cool. I could introduce some shadows and some texture. Well, he's a little of everything. Yeah, that would be like a real mashup. The thing to realize about DNA testing in dogs, by the way, is that many breeds share the same genes. So, like, you might find the same, like, loci in, like, a bulldog and a mastiff and a Dalmatian and a chow chow. And so when those DNA tests operate, they're actually just trying to find, like, the strongest correlation. But if you have the right mix of breeds, It can just, yeah, it can just come off as a little bit of all sorts of stuff, and they won't be able to find a clear breed designation. Because they're just looking and saying, okay, so this dog has X, Y, and Z, and when we're the other breed that we typically see X, Y, and Z together in is this breed. So that's what those are. They're not actually able to look into your dog's genome, but they're looking for gene combinations that, or loci combinations, haplotype combinations that are found together in a particular breed. It's an inexact science. That's why you hear people like doing those DNA tests and like their giant dog ends up, to be like part Pomeranian or something. Yep, for sure, Valander. I've had both. I've had American Shorthairs, and then I had a full-blooded Abyssinian, and I had a half Siamese, half Mamasan. There we go. So stippling in some dark gives us more depth on these flagstones, lets us suggest the textures and irregularities that have them sculpted on. So depending on whether you want to accent or minimize the features of the sculpt will depend on whether, how much extra work you want to do to bring those features out with stippling and with lining and with blending. And then you can always kind of use the edge of your brush to kind of bring an edge all along this edge on the outside. Couch panthers, yeah, for sure. Loafs, yes, I think that's a breed. The feline loaf. Found in its native habitat. On your couch, on your bed, on your face. Yeah, 2 different gene pools. Inara, for sure. But probably the same origin. The general short-haired cat of the British Isles is just a little bit different than the general short-haired cat of the Americas. That's what they would call, in canines, they call that village dogs, which are generally the populations of dogs that are half feral or not, half domesticated, that are free breeding without human intervention, and tend to have a lot of genetic diversity. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and it's probably just the gene pool, right? I mean, the British Shorthair is on an island, so unless it's imported or exported, or other cats are imported or to it, it will have a pretty particular characteristic genes that are distributed through most of the population. It's fascinating stuff. God, I love genetics. Don't get me going. You have 2 comedians and a straight man. That's awesome. All right, so we've got some nice detailing on the floor here now, and it didn't take us very long. There's still a little bit more I could do in back, so I'm going to shadow a little bit back here. Add some shadows in like I did on the front, just with a quick stipple. Then I'll come in and kind of blend those in a little bit with a bluish color while they're still a little wet. If you don't get to them while they're still wet, you can always add, just stipple a little dry paint over them and you'll be fine. Yeah, I miss my animals, but it's also nice just for a little while not to have to worry about anything other than me. You have enough cats for 3 people? Good deal. I know, we're discussing cats without Kuranico. You have stuffed animals. That's funny, Deborah. Yeah, I had neighbors. Well, they were like on the next block, but they kind of lived in kind of a little nook in our subdivision that was wooded, and they actually had 2 pet raccoons in a cage. Like they kept them like rabbits in a big hutch in their backyard. I don't remember if it was illegal or not. My parents strongly implied that it was, but nobody really reported them. Just a little bit of light on that forward edge again. There we go. And that's pretty good. Looks nice. Nice and simple. And it only took like 15 minutes. Yeah, the rounder head and the narrower head seem to be like kind of 2 different feline types. Some breeds have both. Like in Siamese, there's like a tendency to that triangular head, but then there's also a part of the breed that has what they call the apple head, which is a rounder head. So it's interesting. I wonder how many genes are behind that one. There we are. Yeah, a little bit more here, I think. And you're just fine-tuning. So we've gotten, today, we worked on the sword and the underside of the sword. And because we had some gray open on our palette, we then did the basing. So there we go. Yeah, I mean, otherwise we had a lot of like wandering off on side topics. But she's almost done, guys. She's here, we'll get that out of the way. She is almost finished. We have some gold to do. Some gold and some touch-ups. And I probably will have some touch-up. Oh, and the little leather. The leather won't take too long, but I do have some brown bits that I need to do. Yeah, like I just said, the leather. We'll see how fast we manage to do the gold NMM next time, and see if we can get both the NMM and the pouches, and the other leather over here done. See how quickly we can finish it up. And then she will be complete. And nobody can say that I haven't painted a chibi before. Ta-da! When we get closer to Halloween, I'll probably pick up my werewolf again and finish him on stream. Yeah, I always had indoor house cats. For sure. I didn't trust anything outdoors to be good to my cats. There we go. All right, guys. So that's pretty cool. And it's time to wrap up the stream. Tomorrow we will work on Wyvern. I may do the hind legs. I may start in the belly. I'm still kind of glancing at the belly going, how am I going to do this? So we'll work it out. We'll work it out. I at least have a stronger concept for that than I do Mushroom Girl, though I'm getting there on Mushroom Girl. I was thinking about what I wanted to do there. Yeah, who are we raiding? I want to know too. What Valandar said. Who will we raid? Oh yes, Crafty Creative, that's right. 2 p.m. Central. Be there. Oh, and yeah, and I'm streaming on my stream today, I think, for a little while, guys, also. But you should give Reaper your views too. Oh, Zambi's disabled raids. Zambi's just like, don't need your raid. Or Twitch is broken. Could be either, right? Equal opportunity breakage. Right, Justin? I mean, it is Twitch. Hydrate. Twitch is broken. Drink. Justin searches for another raid. One which will properly appreciate us. There we go. Oh, Xana, there we go. Could be just Twitchy. Yay! All right, everybody. Some of you maybe I'll see on my stream later today. Otherwise, tune in to Reaper for the Crafty Creative, or just hang out and enjoy your afternoon. And I'll see you tomorrow for the Wyvern. All right? See you later.